Awaken the giant in you. There's a version of you that exists only in potential, stronger, clearer, unshaken by the noise that breaks everyone else. You felt it in those rare moments when everything aligns, when you move with purpose, when doubt goes silent and something deeper takes over. But then the moment fades. You return to autopilot. The giant sleeps again. And here's what most people never realize. That giant isn't waiting for perfect conditions to wake up. It's waiting for you to stop negotiating, to stop asking for permission, to stop living like your life is a rehearsal for something that's coming later. The Stoics knew this. They understood that greatness isn't bestowed, it's excavated. It's buried under years of comfort, distraction, and the quiet lie that you'll get to it eventually. But eventually is a graveyard. If you're ready to stop postponing your own awakening, then let this be the moment. Not tomorrow, not when things get easier. Now. Most men live their entire lives at 40%, not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they've become fluent in the language of almost. Almost committed, almost disciplined, almost ready to change. They carry this quiet knowledge, this haunting awareness that they're capable of more. But they've gotten so good at managing that discomfort, at explaining it away, at making peace with mediocrity, that the giant inside them has learned to sleep through anything. You see it everywhere. The man who talks about the business he'll start someday. The one who's been thinking about getting in shape for 3 years. The one whose dreams have become bedtime stories he tells himself to feel better about staying small. And the tragedy isn't the failure, it's the acceptance. It's the moment when a man stops believing he's capable of transformation and starts treating his potential like a childhood fantasy. Something naive, something he's outgrown. But here's what the Stoics understood that modern culture has forgotten. You haven't outgrown anything. You've just buried it under layers of convenience, routine, and the fear of looking foolish while you build. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength? It's not something you need to create. It already exists. The giant is already there, beneath the surface, waiting for you to clear away the debris. The question isn't whether you're capable. The question is, how much longer are you willing to pretend you're not? The Awakening. Principle 1. The giant sleeps in comfort. Let's start with the truth no one wants to hear. Comfort is a cage disguised as a reward. You worked hard. You earned your Netflix subscription, your weekend routines, your right to relax. And somewhere in that permission to rest, you forgot that the giant doesn't wake up in ease, it wakes up in resistance. Every time you choose the comfortable option, you're not just avoiding discomfort. You're teaching yourself that your desires are more important than your direction. That how you feel right now matters more than who you're becoming. And the giant? It hears that message. It learns to stay down. Think about your mornings. That moment when the alarm goes off and your mind floods you with reasons to stay in bed. You're tired. You didn't sleep well. Just 10 more minutes won't hurt. Most people lose the day right there. Not because they're weak, because they've trained themselves to negotiate with feelings instead of leading them. The giant awakens the moment you move anyway. Not because you feel inspired, not because it's easy, but because you decided that your commitment matters more than your comfort. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen." That ripening happens in the uncomfortable hours, In the early mornings when your body resists. In the late nights when focus is hard. In the middle of the journey when no one's watching and progress feels invisible. That's where the giant grows, not in the highlight reel, in the hidden work. So ask yourself, what comfort are you clinging to that's keeping you small? What easy option have you chosen so many times it's become your identity? Because the moment you release it, the moment you choose the harder path without needing it to feel good, you'll feel something shift, a stirring, a recognition, the giant remembering what it was built for. Principle 2. The giant speaks in whispers, not thunder. You're waiting for a sign, some dramatic moment of clarity where the path lights up and doubt disappears and you just know what to do. But that's not how awakening works. The giant doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It whispers, it nudges, it shows up as a quiet pull towards something that scares you, something that asks more of you than you think you can give. Most men miss it because they're listening for the wrong voice. They're waiting for motivation to arrive like a rescue team. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like weather. The giant speaks in that still, small knowing. The one you feel when you walk past the gym and something in you says, you should go in. The one that whispers, you need to have that hard conversation. The one that says, stop scrolling, start building. And what do most people do? They argue with it. They negotiate. They say, I'll listen tomorrow, when I'm ready, when I have more time. But the giant doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It waits for commitment. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That quiet voice? That's not fate. That's you, the real you, the one who knows what you're avoiding, what you're capable of, what you're meant to do. And every time you ignore it, you're not just delaying action, you're training yourself not to trust your own inner guidance. You're teaching the giant that its voice doesn't matter. So here's the practice. Start listening to the whispers before they have to become screams. When that pull comes, that subtle sense that you should do something uncomfortable, something meaningful, don't analyze it to death. Don't wait for it to make perfect sense. Act on it. Small, immediate, just once. Because the more you honor those quiet nudges, the louder they become. Not in volume, but in clarity. The giant starts to trust that you're finally ready to listen. And when you prove, through action, not intention, that you're serious about waking up, the whispers become a roar. Principle 3. The giant feeds on adversity. Here's where most people get it backwards. They think the goal is to avoid struggle, to find the path of least resistance, to hack their way to success without the hard parts. But the hard parts are the point. The giant doesn't grow in safety, it grows in the fire. Every obstacle you face, every failure that humbles you, every moment when you want to quit but don't, those aren't roadblocks, they're fuel. Seneca wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Most men treat difficulty like punishment, like evidence that they're on the wrong path. So they quit, they pivot, they search for the version of their dream that doesn't require them to change. But the disciplined understand something profound. Resistance isn't the enemy of progress, it's the proof of it. When the workout gets hard, you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. When the project feels impossible, you're not failing, you're entering territory most people avoid. When people doubt you, criticize you, tell you it can't be done, you're not being attacked, you're being tested. And the giant? It thrives in those tests. Think about the moments in your life when you grew the most. Not the easy seasons, the brutal ones. The times when you had no choice but to rise. When comfort wasn't an option. When you discovered what you were made of because everything else was stripped away. That's the giant at full strength. So stop running from hard things. Stop treating adversity like a detour. Start seeing it for what it really is. The only path to the version of you that doesn't break. The weak avoid struggle. The strong seek it. Not because they're masochists, because they understand that greatness is forged in friction. Every rep that burns, every conversation that scares you, every failure that teaches you, every moment when quitting would be easier, but you stay anyway. That's not suffering, that's sculpture. You're chiseling away everything that isn't the giant. And when the storm hits, and it will, you won't ask, why is this happening to me? You'll ask, what is this building in me? That shift in perspective changes everything. Principle 4. The giant requires solitude. You cannot awaken in a crowd, not because people are bad, but because the noise of others, their expectations, their opinions, their fears projected onto you, drowns out the voice you need to hear most, your own. The giant doesn't emerge in group chats. It doesn't reveal itself in social media debates or approval-seeking performances. It emerges in silence, in solitude, in the uncomfortable space where you're forced to face yourself without distraction. Most men are terrified of that space, so they fill it. Podcasts, music, notifications, conversations, anything to avoid sitting with their own thoughts. Anything to avoid the questions that only come in quiet. Am I living the life I actually want? Or am I living the life I think I'm supposed to want? Am I building something real? Or am I just performing what looks impressive? Those questions? They're not comfortable. That's why most people avoid them. But the giant lives on the other side of that discomfort. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, wrote his meditations in solitude, not for an audience, for himself, because he understood that clarity doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal examination. You need time alone, not to escape life, but to process it, to think without influence, to build without distraction, to hear the whisper beneath the noise. That's where vision gets clear, where purpose crystallizes, where you separate what you actually want from what you've been conditioned to chase. And here's what happens when you start protecting that solitude. You stop needing constant input. You stop asking everyone's opinion. You stop second-guessing yourself, because you've built a direct line to your own truth. The giant doesn't need a committee. It needs commitment. And that commitment is forged in the quiet hours when no one else is watching. So create space, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. No phone, no input, just you and your thoughts. Journal, walk, sit, think. Let the noise settle. Let the performance fall away. Let the giant surface. Principle 5. The giant demands consistency, not perfection. Most people never awaken the giant because they're waiting to do it perfectly. They think, I'll start when I have the perfect plan, when I'm fully prepared, when I know I won't fail. But perfection is a trap. It's the ego's way of keeping you safe, of preventing you from starting, of protecting you from the vulnerability of being a beginner. The giant doesn't care about perfection. It cares about persistence. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Not an explosion, a habit. Not one heroic moment, 1,000 small ones. You don't wake up one day transformed. You wake up every day and make one choice that aligns with who you're becoming. Then another. Then another, until those choices stop feeling like effort and start feeling like identity. The man who writes 1 page a day builds a book. The man who waits for inspiration builds nothing but excuses. The man who trains 3 times a week for a year builds a body. The man who waits for the perfect program builds regret. The man who has 1 difficult conversation a week builds courage. The man who waits for confidence builds resentment. Consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't make for good content. You won't get applause for showing up on day 47 when no one's watching and nothing feels exciting anymore. But that's exactly when the giant grows. Not in the beginning, when enthusiasm carries you. In the middle, in the mundane. In the moments when you could quit and no one would even notice. Except you. You would notice. And every time you show up anyway, tired, uninspired, uncertain, you're not just building discipline. You're building trust with yourself. You're proving that your word means something, that your commitments aren't conditional. The giant awakens in that proof, not in your intentions, in your follow-through. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start where you are. Messy, uncertain, imperfect. Just start, and then show up again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Because the giant doesn't emerge fully formed. It's built, brick by brick, rep by rep, day by day. Until one morning, you look in the mirror and realize the person staring back isn't the one who started this journey. That's the awakening. Not a moment, a momentum. Principle 6. The giant lives beyond approval. You will never fully awaken if you're still trying to please everyone. The giant requires something most people aren't willing to give: the courage to disappoint, to walk away from expectations that don't serve you, to say no to people who want you to stay small, to build something that doesn't make sense to anyone but you. Most men spend their lives performing, playing roles, being the good son, the reliable friend, the impressive professional. And in all that performance, they lose themselves. The giant doesn't perform. It exists, authentically, unapologetically, without needing external validation to know its worth. Seneca wrote, "The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately." That immediacy, that willingness to live according to your own truth, right now, regardless of who approves, is what separates those who awaken from those who remain asleep. People will question you. They'll project their own fears onto your choices. They'll tell you you're changing, that you're different, that you're making a mistake. Good. That discomfort they feel? It's not about you. It's about them, confronting the fact that you're doing something they're too afraid to attempt. You're holding up a mirror, and they don't like what they see. But you're not responsible for their comfort. You're responsible for your growth. The giant awakens when you stop editing yourself for audiences that will never be satisfied. When you stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for your full expression. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need consensus. You need clarity. And clarity comes from within, not from the crowd. So let them talk. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand. You're not building a life that requires their approval. You're building one that requires your integrity. And when you finally release the need to be liked, something extraordinary happens. You become free. Free to build. Free to fail. Free to become. The giant doesn't need permission. It just needs you to get out of the way. Principle 7. The giant honors the long game. We live in a world addicted to instant results, quick fixes, overnight success, the 30-day transformation. But the giant doesn't work on that timeline. It's built over years, decades, a lifetime. Not because it's slow, because it's deep. Because real transformation doesn't just change what you do. It changes who you are. And that kind of change takes time. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." You want the shortcut, the hack, the way to skip the middle and arrive at mastery without the mess. But there is no shortcut. There's only the work. The unglamorous, invisible, repetitive work that no one sees and no one celebrates. The man who builds a business doesn't do it in a weekend. He does it in 10,000 small decisions across years of uncertainty. The man who builds a body doesn't do it in a month. He does it in disciplined mornings, in meals no one notices, in workouts that feel like nothing but add up to everything. The man who builds character doesn't do it in one moment of crisis. He does it in 1,000 moments of restraint, of choosing principle over convenience, of honoring his word when it would be easier to break it. That's the long game. And most people quit before it pays off, not because they can't do it, because they expected faster results. But the giant doesn't care about your expectations. It only responds to your commitment. So when progress feels slow, remember, you're not falling behind, you're laying foundation. And foundation takes time. But once it's set, everything you build on top of it lasts. The world will try to rush you, to convince you that if you're not there yet, you're failing. But that's a lie designed to keep you chasing rather than building. You're not in a race, you're in a transformation. And transformation doesn't happen on anyone's timeline but yours. So play the long game. Stay patient. Stay consistent. Trust the process even when you can't see the progress. Because one day, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but one day, you'll look back and realize you're not who you were. You didn't just achieve something, you became someone. That's the giant fully awake. And it was worth every moment of patience. So here's what it comes down to. The giant isn't something you find. It's something you excavate. It's already there, beneath the comfort, beneath the doubt, beneath the years of playing it safe and living at half capacity. And awakening it isn't about one big decision. It's about 1,000 small ones. Choosing discomfort over ease. Listening to whispers instead of waiting for thunder. Feeding on adversity instead of avoiding it. Protecting solitude instead of filling every moment. Honoring consistency over perfection. Releasing the need for approval. Playing the long game when everyone else is sprinting toward shortcuts. That's the path. Not glamorous, not easy, but real. And here's what happens when you walk it. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention. You stop asking permission and start taking ownership. You stop waiting for the right moment and start creating it. The giant doesn't need perfect conditions. It needs you to stop negotiating, to stop explaining, to stop postponing. It needs you to decide, right now, in this moment, that you're done sleeping through your own life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Everything you've been avoiding, that's not blocking you, that's calling you. The hard conversation, the uncomfortable change, the disciplined routine, the solitary work, the long game. That's where the giant lives, not in someday, in today. So let me ask you something, and answer honestly. If the giant in you woke up fully, if you stopped holding back, stopped playing small, stopped waiting for permission, what would you build? Not what would you say, what would you do? Because that answer, it's not a fantasy, it's a blueprint. And the only thing stopping you from following it is the decision to start. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready, not when it's easier. Now. The alarm will go off tomorrow morning, and you'll have a choice. The same choice you've had every morning. The same choice that's been waiting for you to finally take it seriously. Stay comfortable, or wake the giant. One keeps you safe, the other makes you unstoppable. You already know which one you need. So stop rehearsing, stop preparing to prepare. Stop treating your potential like a part-time hobby. The giant is awake. The question is, are you ready to meet it? Stay focused. Stay grounded. The quiet work you do today is shaping the strength they'll never see coming.